I knew something was off when the CEO showed up to a daily stand-up he usually slept through. He stood there in his overpriced blazer, fake smiling like a toothpaste ad with a grudge. We were barely through the second bullet on the ops agenda when he interrupted, clapping his hands like a deranged camp counselor. "Quick pivot," he said, eyes locked on me. "We're letting Claire go today, effective immediately. Too much negative energy." The room froze. My team, the same folks who trusted me through 3 platform migrations, 6 outages, and 2 restructurings, just stared. Even the intern looked like she might throw up. I didn't cry. I didn't even blink. I reached for my badge, unclipped it slowly, and handed it over like I was surrendering a gun in a Western. Then I said it. 7 words that silenced the entire floor. "Tell the investors why the system shuts off in 8 minutes. I turned, heels clicking across the linoleum like a metronome of regret, and walked toward the glass doors. Nobody moved. Not even him. He just stood there, that shitty little smirk beginning to twitch. By the time I hit the lobby, you could practically feel the panic brewing behind me. Keyboards clattering, people whisper shouting into headsets, dashboards blinking warning oranges and reds. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Then again. But I didn't check. I already knew what they were seeing. The system doing exactly what I told them it would if they ever pulled a stunt this stupid. Hey, if you're the kind of person who appreciates a story where karma wears heels and carries a clipboard, don't forget to subscribe and like the video. It helps more than you think, and honestly, this team works overtime so these stories find the people who need them. I pushed through the revolving doors like I'd done 1,000 times, except this time I wasn't going back. My hand brushed the side pocket of my coat, where the original continuity key policy lived in triplicate. Drafted by me, reviewed by risk, signed by legal, and filed with the board 6 months ago. The policy, nobody read. The checklist, nobody respected. The handoff procedure, nobody thought they'd need because I was too good at my job to ever leave. Joke's on them. I didn't leave. I was erased. But the system doesn't care about ego. It cares about protocol. 8 minutes. That's how long the platform has before the kill safe initiates. Just long enough for in-progress data transactions to close out cleanly, logs to archive, and systems to enter safe mode. Not a bug, not a hack. Just the insurance-mandated protocol tied to the named continuity officer badge, which, as of 30 seconds ago, no longer existed. I warned them. I trained them. I sent the PDF in 3 different formats and walked them through it in a lunch and learn. They laughed, called me paranoid, told me it made them look slow in front of investors. Now the investors were on the line hearing that exact term, continuity officer, wondering why nobody was authorized to stop the platform from slipping into protected lockdown. And I was walking past a corner cafe, wondering whether to get espresso or just ride the satisfaction buzz for a while. He thought firing me in public would make me look weak, but all it did was prove he never understood how the damn thing worked, or who held the keys. 6 months ago, I sat in conference room C with a whiteboard marker in one hand and a lukewarm coffee in the other, begging executives half my age to take continuity planning seriously. The room smelled like catered sandwiches and ego. I was already 2 hours into explaining how the insurer's latest policy update tied our data liability cap to one condition. We had to appoint a named continuity officer, maintain an active handoff protocol, and log every transition with a signature trail. No gray area. No interpretation. Lose the officer without documented succession, and the system shuts itself down to prevent data loss and legal exposure. Black and white. Legal signed it. Risk signed it. I signed it. The CEO had doodled a spaceship on his agenda printout. It wasn't just a formality. We had too many interdependent systems, too many global clients, and too much at stake to trust a verbal, "she told me last week," as a handoff. So I built the protocol myself. 3 steps, foolproof. 1. Designate successor. 2. Run joint validation drill. 3. File checklist with timestamp. We practiced it quarterly, or rather, I practiced it. Everyone else treated it like a fire drill at a candle store. When I emailed the board packet, it included the training deck, the run book, and the attendance log with one glaring blank line: CEO not present. I even highlighted it in yellow before printing the physical copy. My note read, "All officers must complete sign-off before next audit." That was 4 board cycles ago. What nobody understood, what they refused to understand, was that the timer wasn't about revenge. It wasn't some secret backdoor I programmed while brooding over a grudge. It was a clause tied directly to our insurer's terms, one they all signed. It only activates under one specific condition: when the named continuity officer is terminated without the completion of the 3-step handoff. Not laid off, not retired, terminated. It's a failsafe, not a trapdoor. But when I brought it up again 2 months ago during the quarterly review, the CEO smirked and said, "We'll cross that bridge if we come to it." I asked if he'd prefer we crossed it with the servers on fire and the lawyers already dialed in. He said I needed to work on my optimism. I said optimism doesn't restore corrupted financial transactions across 6 countries. He left early. Again. So I documented everything. Every skipped meeting, every unsigned form, every training invite that got ghosted. I kept screenshots, hard copies, and backups in the compliance archive just in case. Not because I thought they'd screw up this badly, but because I knew someday someone would get too bold, too smug, and forget that invisible doesn't mean unimportant. That day came with a clapping CEO and a one-liner about negative energy. He cut the wrong wire. The irony is, he thought I was the bottleneck, the dead weight, the woman with too many spreadsheets and not enough vision. But the moment he revoked my badge without triggering the handoff checklist, the system made its own decision. It didn't ask for drama. It followed logic. The funny thing about logic, it doesn't care who's smiling when they swing the axe. It only cares if the protocol was followed. And in this case, it wasn't, which meant the timer started ticking the second that badge hit his palm. 8 minutes. Enough time for regret. Not enough for spin. The second I stepped off company property, the air felt different. Lighter somehow. Like the moment after a thunderclap when all you can hear is your own heartbeat and the rustling of things no one usually notices. Except this time, the rustling was the buzz of 100 phones losing their minds 2 floors up. Mine too. It started as a gentle tremor in my coat pocket, then another, then a sustained hum, each vibration like a distant siren. But I didn't reach for it. Not yet. I kept walking down the block, past the newsstand where I used to grab gum before 7 a.m. calls, past the alley where smokers traded rumors with engineers. I paused for a second at the curb, waiting for the light to change, and in the glass of a dark storefront, I caught a glimpse of the building behind me. I didn't turn. I didn't need to, because I knew what was happening. Right about now, some poor analyst was watching the main ops dashboard glitch out in slow motion. At T-8 minutes, the interface doesn't crash. It warps. Status bars freeze, transaction queues halt, alerts cascade in a silent digital avalanche. Then comes the red band across the top of every critical screen. Continuity chain severed, secure mode initializing. No override, no password, no hotfix, because the system doesn't ask for credentials, it asks for process. And process died the moment I did, professionally speaking. At that exact moment, the audit committee received the scheduled email. The subject line was simple: continuity change detected. The message body contained one sentence, time-stamped and immutable. Per policy 4.1, continuity chain was broken at 9:17 a.m. without successor protocol. Auto sequence initiated. Reference handoff packet. Board archive, continuity, folder C. It wasn't sabotage, it was clockwork. I slipped into a quiet diner 3 blocks down, ordered a black coffee, and took the corner booth where I used to revise runbooks before quarterly drills. The waitress smiled, recognizing me, and slid a refill over before I could even ask. I offered a tired nod and finally took my phone out. 18 missed calls, 6 voicemails, 4 texts from the CFO, 2 from legal, and 1 from the same HR manager who once told me my tone-made process feel threatening. I scrolled past them all and opened the monitoring app I wasn't supposed to have access to anymore. It loaded. My clearance hadn't fully cycled out of the cache yet. On the metrics dashboard, uptime was ticking down, transaction latency was spiking, and a queue of error messages was building like a clogged artery. All of it expected, all of it preventable. Somewhere in the war room, they were scrambling to reboot a platform that was never built to accept a brute force restart. That's the thing about continuity systems. When designed right, they're immune to panic. You can't scream at them. You can't threaten them. You can't power cycle your way out of negligence. You can only follow the checklist or pay the price. They were discovering that now, probably yelling at the ops team to just turn it back on, like this was a goddamn Wi-Fi router. But the system wasn't waiting for a reboot. It was waiting for a successor, a human. Trained, documented, validated, signed off. And until that happened, everything stayed still, quiet, cold. That was the beauty of it. It didn't punish them. It protected everything else. The clients, the contracts, the data. It was never about me. It was about making sure the whole damn circus didn't burn down because some suit wanted to feel powerful for 15 seconds. I sipped my coffee, stared out the window, and resisted the urge to smile. Not because I was vindicated, because I was finally done trying to convince people that brakes aren't there to slow you down. They're there so you survive the ride. By the time I was halfway through my second coffee, refilled by instinct more than request, my phone looked like it had joined a telethon. 56 missed calls. Voicemails stacking like unpaid bills, notifications from internal systems I technically shouldn't be seeing anymore. But apparently, the offboarding checklist wasn't followed either. Irony's a damn fine seasoning. I didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, I pulled out a little notebook, yes, paper, and jotted down timestamps, not for nostalgia, for evidence. Every call, every voicemail, every please call back ASAP text from legal or HR, that's an alibi I didn't ask for but was damn well collecting. A breadcrumb trail of corporate panic lined up like ducks too stupid to realize they're waddling into their own audit. The CFO left a voicemail so frantic it nearly came with subtitles. "We need to talk. Claire, please. This is affecting trading velocity. We just need you to approve a soft bypass so we can restore partial access and stabilize comms." Click. No, you don't. That's not how continuity works, Todd. You don't bypass protocol with a polite panic attack. You follow the process you called overkill 6 times in the last 2 months. Then HR chimed in. "Claire, this is Valerie. We may have acted hastily. If we could have a constructive dialogue to..." She trailed off, bless her heart, realizing halfway through that she was trying to smooth over a termination with the same tone she used to cancel a catered lunch. I didn't bother listening to the second message. It was just noise. Legal was more direct. "Claire, we are formally requesting that you assist in deactivating the failsafe protocol to avoid systemic disruption." I actually laughed out loud at that one. The waitress raised an eyebrow. I waved it off. "Just work," I muttered. She nodded like she'd heard it before. She probably had. Then came the photo. It was from Morgan, the intern. Smart kid, actually paid attention during the last continuity drill. She'd been silent until now, but the image she sent said it all. The CEO, red-faced and sweating, pointing at the screen in the main ops hub, shouting the words in all caps on the glass panel behind him. "Override it." The caption underneath, hastily typed, was just, "I don't think he read the protocol." I stared at the photo for a long moment. It was everything I needed, one frame of corporate hubris mid-tantrum. There is no override without the checklist. The checklist requires the named officer. The named officer was sipping diner coffee 3 blocks away, with no badge, no access, and 0 obligation to play nice. I texted Morgan one line back. "Back up your messages, keep everything off the company drive. I'll explain later." That photo was my insurance policy, my proof, not of guilt. They had plenty of that, but of intent. The CEO wasn't confused. He was enraged that the machine wouldn't bend just because he barked. And now, somewhere in the layers of middle management, a story was forming. Claire went rogue. Claire sabotaged us. Claire designed a kill switch. But policy is louder than spin. My board packet had dates, signatures, memos, and yes, even that damned attendance sheet with one smug blank spot where the CEO never bothered to show. The question wasn't whether the shutdown was real. The question was, which story would the board believe? I looked down at my phone, still buzzing. Then I turned it face down on the table. Let them sweat. I'd spent years holding the line, being the no that kept everything from falling apart. Today, I was done holding it for free. The packet was labeled Continuity Protocol Enforceable Copy, printed in red block letters I'd chosen myself for clarity, not drama. It had been delivered 3 weeks ago to the audit chair's office in hard copy and encrypted email. I'd even followed up with a cheery note, just in case anyone wants to avoid a public shutoff. No one responded, because of course they didn't. But now, somewhere between the 5th client outage call and the CFO's 4th meltdown, someone finally cracked the seal. The audit chair, Mary Langford, who once told me I was aggressively thorough, was now flipping through my packet like it held the cure to cancer. Because in a way, it did. The moment she hit the one-page summary, the air shifted. It wasn't a novel. Just 247 words, written in language so plain it bordered on insulting. Platform continuity is guaranteed only when the named officer, see Appendix B, is removed via protocol-compliant handoff. Removal without documented successor triggers an 8-minute transactional grace period followed by secure shutdown. This measure is required for liability containment per insurer mandate. And there it was, my name, typed and signed in blue ink, Claire J. Enders, Continuity Officer. Effective term, 14 months. Handoff status, not completed. Their signatures were right below mine. CEO, CFO, legal, compliance, all lined up like dominoes in a slow-motion collapse. And I hadn't even needed a lawyer, just a laminated copy and the ability to wait. I could picture Mary, her lipstick always too perfect. Lips pursed in that way she did when someone underestimated her. The one she used during a congressional testimony or when she smelled blood in a quarterly earnings call. I'd seen that look once before, back when a vendor tried to hide a clause in a procurement contract. That vendor no longer existed. Now she was reading every line aloud in the boardroom, not shouting, just steady even, surgical. I could hear it in my head. Who approved this? We all did. Then why wasn't the handoff protocol followed? We didn't think. Thinking wasn't the requirement. Signing was. The system hadn't malfunctioned. It had obeyed. The 8-minute window was there to save them, not doom them. It gave the platform time to pause active transactions, flush logs, and prevent data corruption. It was their safety rope. And they'd set it on fire because someone wanted to make a point in front of an open floor plan. And now? Now, the only way to fix it was public. The successor had to be appointed in writing with oversight from legal and the board's compliance rep. They had to complete the 3-part handoff with validation tests. No skipping, no bluffing, and they had to do it in front of the very auditors they were hoping to impress 2 days from now. It was so simple it hurt. I sat in the diner booth, stirring cold cream into what had once been coffee, feeling the strangest cocktail of relief and fury. I hadn't built this to cause chaos. I'd built it so the chaos couldn't win. And yet, here we were, because the man at the top couldn't be bothered to show up to a 20-minute training and thought the word officer was just ceremonial. They thought the rule was mine. But it wasn't. It was theirs. They signed it. They framed it. They ignored it. And now they had to crawl through it. I didn't want fire. I wanted order. I wanted fairness. But when you burn the playbook and still expect the game to work, don't be shocked when the whistle never blows. They sent a driver. Not a call, not an email. A black SUV pulled up in front of the diner like I was a diplomat instead of the woman they publicly humiliated 3 hours ago. The man behind the wheel said nothing, just held the door open with the same detached professionalism you see in funerals and billion-dollar mergers. The board wanted a discreet discussion, according to the message. Discreet. Right. Nothing says discretion like collapsing the entire platform because someone skipped a policy briefing. I slid into the back seat, let the silence ride with us, and watched the buildings smear past. When we arrived, it wasn't through the front lobby. It was the service elevator straight to the executive floor. Someone had decided the optics mattered again. The boardroom was a different world now. The energy was low and clipped, the kind of tension that builds after a controlled detonation. Mary Langford stood at the head of the table, no CEO in sight. Just legal, compliance, finance, and 2 investors who looked like they'd aged a decade since sunrise. Everyone avoided eye contact except Mary. She didn't sit. "Claire," she said evenly, "thank you for coming." "I didn't," I said. "You sent a car." A beat passed. She gestured to a chair, which I ignored. If they wanted to talk protocol, they could stand too. "We'd like you to help us reverse the protocol," she continued. "You can't reverse what was never activated manually," I said. The system followed its design. If you want to restore service, you follow the process. And if we appoint a successor now, then you have to do it properly, publicly, with the handoff checklist, validation tests, and a signed acknowledgement of the breach. I laid a folder on the table. And my terms. Mary blinked. Terms? I'm not asking for my job back, I said. I don't want it. But I'm not letting you bury the people who saw this coming. I opened the folder and listed them off. 1. Full protection for whistleblowers, including Morgan and the ops leads who raised flags you ignored. 2. A formal correction on internal comms and the investor update. This was not sabotage. This was compliance. 3. The runbook gets followed. Word for word. No shortcuts. No CEO overrides and no quiet revisions later. 4. I get a consulting retainer through Q4 to oversee the restoration, with full transparency access and indemnity. And 5. No scapegoats. Not the engineers, not the interns, not the analysts. If anyone tries to streamline responsibility downward, I walk. And the next story doesn't stay in this room. No one spoke. Legal opened her mouth, then closed it. One of the investors shifted like he was sitting on a landmine. Mary finally broke the silence. HR attempted to remove your training records this morning, she said. Legal has flagged the deletion as discoverable. I didn't flinch. Then I suggest they stop digging. Everything they erased exists in the board archive and 3 encrypted backups. Mary nodded slowly, like someone acknowledging a sniper on a roof. We'll accept your terms. She turned to the room. Effective immediately, the CEO is recused from operational authority pending review. I'm assuming interim control for restoration oversight. No ceremony, no apology, just the sound of power shifting in real time, and the sound of me standing a little taller, a little colder, because I wasn't back. I was there to make sure it didn't get worse. They wanted me to flip a switch. I gave them a mirror instead. And now they'd have to stare into it while they rebuilt what ego almost erased. The war room looked like it had been built for a different crisis. Glass walls, digital displays, too much chrome, not enough humility. But now it held something more useful. Silence. The kind that settles when everyone realizes this isn't about saving face anymore. It's about not losing the company. I laid the 3-page restoration checklist on the table, the one they once called Claire's Control Freak Manifesto. Now it might as well have been scripture. I uncapped a red pen, circled 3 boxes, and slid it forward. 1. Successor named. 2. Handoff checklist completed. 3. Validation tests passed. Until all 3 are greenlit under audit supervision, the platform stays dark. The lead auditor, a thin man with tired eyes and a notebook that looked like it had seen war, nodded and hit record on his tablet. His presence was a requirement now, not a courtesy. He was the one person in the room with less to lose and more to document than me. I looked to the right corner of the table, where Lena Carter stood with her arms folded and a face like steel wrapped in silk. My successor. I had trained her myself, quietly, thoroughly, after she asked one too many smart questions during an onboarding review. She was green back then, but hungry. Now? She looked ready. Mary gestured to her. Are you prepared to assume continuity designation under Clause 4.1? Lena didn't flinch. I am. We walked through it slowly, step by step. I handed her the packet. She reviewed each section, signed where required, asked clarifying questions not to delay, but to show the room what due diligence actually looked like. Every eye was on her, but she never blinked. She wasn't there to impress anyone. She was there to restore function. Then came the validation drill, simple on paper, excruciating in practice. We simulated a power failure, a transaction halt, and a service reroute. The system responded exactly as it was supposed to, pausing at the final checkpoint with a blinking prompt. Continuity officer validation required. Lena keyed in her credentials, swiped her badge, and scanned the signed protocol. The system digested it, thought, then blinked green. Transaction flow resumed in real time. It didn't roar back to life. It didn't celebrate. It just did what it was built to do. And honestly, that was enough. That was the win. The auditor marked the box with a dry little smile, then turned to the remaining line item. Terminated officer acknowledgement of improper handoff procedure. Every head turned to the empty chair at the end of the table. The one meant for the CEO. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. His absence echoed louder than any admission. Mary cleared her throat. We'll secure that signature. For now, continuity is restored under Clause 4.1 with full compliance. I looked down at the checklist. Each box ticked, each signature aligned, each step undeniable. No noise, no shortcuts, just torque and patience, like fixing a jammed gear with your bare hands while everyone else watches and hopes you don't slip. There wasn't relief, not yet. But there was structure. And in the void his arrogance left behind, that was more valuable than any apology. Lena glanced at me as the room shifted to next steps. Her eyes didn't ask for praise. She didn't need it. She'd earned her role the way I had, quietly, deliberately, with receipts. And just like that, the system hummed again. Not because of force, because of precision. He made them wait. Of course he did. While the platform rebooted in silence and dashboards crawled back to life, the man responsible for the detonation locked himself in his office and refused to come out. For almost an hour, the final item on the checklist, terminated officer acknowledgement of improper handoff procedure, sat blank on the table, an open wound in ink. The system was functional. Yes, Lena was in place. Auditors confirmed compliance. But the board refused to close the file without that signature. They wanted it in writing, that this wasn't an unexpected systems failure or a miscommunication, but a leadership failure, a human one, his. Eventually, Mary stood up, walked to his door, and knocked once, then twice. Then didn't bother knocking again. She keyed in a code only she and the security team had. The lock disengaged with a soft click. Inside, he was pacing like a man negotiating with gravity. The blinds were drawn. The tie was off. The illusion was cracked and leaking at the edges. He didn't look at her when she spoke. "They've stabilized continuity," she said. "Lena's official. Claire's terms are accepted. We need your signature on the acknowledgement." He muttered something. Mary didn't flinch. She simply laid the single-page form on the edge of his desk and stood there. Not as a subordinate, as a witness. He stared at the paper. The header was brutal in its simplicity. Acknowledgement of non-compliance with continuity protocol resulting in system lockdown. His name pre-typed. My name listed below under previous officer. No adjectives, no blame, just facts. It was surgical and damning. "They'll use this against me," he finally said. "They already are," she replied, because by then the investors had received the packet. They'd had it for hours, passed through secure hands and couriered directly to their inboxes the moment the lockout began. They weren't calling to ask about uptime anymore. They were asking for a leadership review by close of business. One even used the word resignation. Another said disclosure obligations. The quiet kind of corporate language that comes before blood. He signed. Angry, jagged, hard enough to almost rip the paper, then shoved the pen away like it burned him. Mary took it without comment, walked back into the boardroom and handed it to the auditor. He inspected it like it was a loaded weapon, nodded, and finally declared the restoration process complete. No one clapped. The room didn't cheer. No one thanked me. That wasn't the point. The point was we'd come full circle, from the moment he grinned and fired me in front of everyone, to this one, where his signature, not mine, became the final switch that brought the lights back. And yet, standing there, watching the systems blink steady and calm, I felt nothing. Not pride, not triumph. Just the kind of hollow vindication that comes when you realize the building had to nearly burn down before anyone noticed the sprinkler system you installed. I gathered my things slowly. The red pen, the checklists, the notes Lena had annotated during the drill. No ceremony, just debris from a day that didn't need to happen. Before I left, one of the investors caught my eye through the glass. He didn't speak, just gave a small, curt nod. Not respect, recognition, and that was enough. Because tomorrow there'd be questions, not just about uptime, but about decisions, about who made them, about who ignored warnings, and about who was still allowed in the room when the next one came. They'd lit the fire. I just showed them where the extinguisher had been the whole damn time. They reconvened the next morning. No breakfast, no chit-chat. Just quiet chairs around a glass table with more fingerprints than eye contact. The lights were dimmed like that would soften the mood, but the air was sharp. The audit chair stood with a single sheet in her hands, my one-page summary, and read it out loud like a verdict. Continuity disruption triggered by non-compliant removal of designated officer without documented successor. Protocol followed by system per insurer requirement. Full process restored via secondary appointment. No evidence of sabotage. Root cause: failure to adhere to established handoff procedure despite multiple formal warnings. The silence that followed wasn't confusion. It was understanding. One of the investors finally leaned forward, hands clasped loosely, and asked the only question that mattered. Who removed the named officer without executing the handoff? All eyes shifted to the CEO. He didn't answer. He didn't clear his throat, or try to spin it, or weaponize corporate speak into deniability. He just sat there, shoulders drawn, gaze low as if hoping silence might somehow undo the ink on the forms he'd signed, or the moment he clapped and fired me in front of a whole damn department. Mary didn't wait for a confession. Effective noon today, executive control will transfer to an interim steering committee until a formal transition can be completed. It wasn't a firing. Not on paper, but it may as well have been a funeral with Wi-Fi. I didn't stay to watch him leave. Instead, I slid my consulting agreement across the table. 3 months, scope to restoration oversight, flat rate, no drama. No title either. I didn't want one, just clean terms and a dotted line. The board signed without hesitation. Before I left, I motioned toward the legal pad in front of the general counsel. You'll also want to formalize a policy update, I said. Continuity officers can't be terminated during active compliance windows unless approved by at least 2 officers. One from risk, one from audit. Make it procedural. He scribbled it down. Mary raised an eyebrow. Will you come back after the rollout? No, I said gently. The system doesn't need me. It just needed the brakes. I walked out with nothing but my notebook, my pen, and the same calm I had when I walked in. The chaos had passed. And in its place, order stood taller than ego. As I stepped through the lobby, again, past the same receptionist who now avoided eye contact, I glanced at the screens on the wall. Everything was stable. Traffic humming, latency low, client systems catching up from the overnight queue. Outside, the sun had clawed its way through the overcast like it earned it. The street was the same, but my place in it wasn't. I wasn't fired. I was finished. Big difference. They'd spent months calling me drag, overly cautious, conservative, a wet blanket in ops heels. But brakes weren't built to slow success. They were built to make sure you survive it. Funny thing, cars without brakes aren't fast. They're wrecks.